You're listening to the Speaking Tongues podcast. I'm your host, El Charisse. Each week, I sit down to a conversation with multilinguals where we discuss and celebrate language, life, and culture through our own perspectives.
Episode 146, Speaking Kannada.
Welcome back to another episode of Speaking Tongues. I'm here today with Joshua. Joshua is an Indian expat living in France and owes a lot of finding his dream job to his language learning skills. He's from South India and speaks 9 languages in various levels. He works at L'Oréal Paris and makes videos on YouTube about his language learning journeys, among other topics in his free time. He's among the few expats that love their lives in Paris and owes a big chunk of that to his language learning too. How are you, Joshua?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, El.
I'm so excited to talk to you, but before I even get anywhere, one of the few expats that loves their lives in Paris?
Oh, yeah, the data on that is very clear.
Huh. So
Yeah.
people are moving there and they're unhappy, that's not right.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about Paris. I have some educated guesses, but there are surveys done year in and year out, and I can even see it in my own expat community.
Mhm.
Paris is rated as one of the worst cities in Europe to live in for expats. They have an ease of settling in index. It's like 48 or 49 out of 60 cities in Europe. So it's never rated anything higher than that for the last 6 years at least that I checked.
Well, you dashed my dreams of relocating to Paris. No, I'm kidding. I like to start each episode with the same question, even though I asked you that question first. But let's start with my typical first question. What is your first language, and which languages have you learned to speak?
I didn't have a first language, fortunately for me. I was raised in South India. My parents are Tamil. My dad is Tamil and my mom is from Kerala, so Malayali. And I was raised in the state of Karnataka, where we speak Kannada. So at home, I heard a lot of Kannada and Tamil every day. And my parents were quite conscious to toss in a lot of English as well, so that we learned English at home. So until I was 2 or 3 years old, I didn't even realize that these were 3 different languages. I just used the phrase that came to my mind. And then I had to realize that these are actually organized in 3 different languages. So these 3 languages to start with. 6 Indian languages and 3 European languages. On the
Okay.
European side, there's English, French, and there's Dutch. I've been working on Dutch for a bit now. And this year I've put in more investment than any other year on my Dutch. I love that language. Um, and from
Oh,
and from India, we have Tamil and Malayalam, of course. Tamil is the most comfortable one because we speak it at home every day. Even now, when I call my parents, it's in Tamil. So Tamil is the most comfortable one for me. Malayalam, not so much because I don't visit there that often, and I don't have much family that I meet on a daily, weekly, monthly that speaks Malayalam. So I can understand Malayalam movies and music, but I can't really speak it too well. But there's quite a lot of Malayalam in me. Kannada, of course. Born and raised in Karnataka, a good 13 years of my life, I lived in North Karnataka and then another 4 or 5 years in South Karnataka before I moved to France. So there's a lot of Kannada in me too. And the north part of Karnataka, where I was raised, borders with Maharashtra, where we speak Marathi. And my parents now live in Mumbai, where we speak Marathi. So I understand Marathi really well, but it's just like my Malayalam, it's not that fluent. And as an engineering student, I consciously chose to hang out only with North Indian students who came to the South, so as to pick up some Hindi. So I picked up good Hindi during my engineering days. My Hindi is much better now than it used to be, and it's very fluent, much more than my Marathi, my Malayalam, and at times there are things I can say in Hindi that I can't in Tamil. So there's the Hindi thing, and a lot of our Bollywood movies have a strong tinge of Urdu, which is a very poetic language. So that's where I have my Urdu from. But after moving to France, I learned Urdu calligraphy. So now I can read and write Urdu, which has been a dream forever. So when it comes to poetry specifically, it's written in the Urdu script, which looks just like Arabic. So now I can do that. Yeah, I think that kind of wraps up all my Indian and European languages.
oh my God, what a dream. Urdu calligraphy. Ooh.
Yeah,
Oh
that is
my
fun.
gosh.
I can do it for
Yeah.
like 2 or 3 hours playing some nice Urdu music, and I've got these hue lights which turn purple and pink, my favorite colors at night. And then
Hmm.
I'm just doing Urdu calligraphy for like 2 hours, and it feels so meditative for me.
Oh my gosh. That's such a dream. Like, especially because Urdu poetry is amazing and the script is so beautiful. So that's such a, how did you get into that? Like, where'd that opportunity come for you to start learning?
The calligraphy. So the fascination for the calligraphy, this story, I really remember it so vividly. It happened when I was like 10 years or something. I remember it so vividly. I made a video about it, spoke about it online as well. We had this gentleman who came to fix our refrigerator when I was a child. And my parents were around. They're going to get the money or whatever. But I just sat observing what he was doing to the refrigerator. He pulled each piece out and then he assembled it back and he's like, they're done. And this guy walks up to me and is like, "You've been watching me since the beginning." I was like, "Yeah." He was speaking to me in Hindi, and my basic level of Hindi back then, I was responding to him and stuff. And then he said, "How come you speak Urdu?" And I was like, "I don't speak Urdu." I was like, "Well, we're speaking in Urdu right now." I was like, "Dude, this is Hindi. What are you talking about?" And then he said, "Go get me a piece of paper and a pen." And he wrote my name in Urdu in the calligraphy. And I was like, "What is this? Why are you starting from the other side? I'm not understanding what's happening here." And then he said, "Do you have any Muslim buddies in the school?" I was like, "Yeah." And he says, "Go to them and show them what this is, and don't tell them anything, and just ask them to read it out to you," which I did. And it's difficult to imagine that someone at that age going to school where this language is not taught. Urdu is not taught in school, the calligraphy part. But my buddies were able to read it. He said, "Oh, that says Joshua. That's your name. Nice." I was like, "How? What witchcraft is this? I want to learn to read from the other side." So it's been in my mind since then. But yeah, life happened in between. I had to find a job, learn, do my adult stuff and everything. But then when the pandemic happened, I was like, wait, you know what? This has been on my bucket list forever. It's time to do Urdu. So I just invested time to do Urdu. Our Bible, I'm born and raised Christian. Our Bible has an Urdu translation. There are only three. So in the Urdu translation, they have the same thing written in the Urdu script and then the same thing written in the Hindi script. And Hindi I can read and write because this was a language we were taught in school. So when I would just, it was no formal education. I did not download anything. And just that piece of paper, I printed it out and I would look at that. And just comparing these two things, I printed out the first four chapters of the book of Psalms. Yeah. And then I would notice every time there was like a U with a dot below, it made a B sound because I have a good quality transliteration in Hindi. And yeah, one thing led to another. I started asking questions online and eventually, yeah, learned Urdu.
That's such a cool experience. And I love specifically that, when you were talking about Hindi and you mentioned all the languages that you grew up around, that you were exposed to, and not realizing specifically that they were different, or that it was a different thing to be multilingual or to understand these different languages. I think that is one of the most fascinating things I find about India. And I haven't been to India yet, but I think it's just so fascinating. And I'm just forever curious about how many languages are just living together and among one another and being exchanged all the time. And then you're, from the South, and then you were talking about how when you were going to engineering school and you were meeting people from the North who spoke Hindi. And it's like, I love that distinction specifically for people who don't live in India, who maybe think like everybody in India speaks Hindi. And, you know, I want people to realize that that's not the case. I want people to realize this linguistic richness and diversity that exists all over the country. Tell me a bit about, you spoke about the languages that you were exposed to in your home. Um, and I'm dying to know, like, what was communication like? What was it like having Tamil, Malayalam, Kannada, like all around you? Like, when would you use certain languages? With whom would you use certain languages? Were you mixing any of them together to make a new hybrid language? Like, what? Tell us about that.
That's a great question. And yeah, India is such a multilingual place. My language learning has been influenced by my family, like everybody else's language learning is. When I would go to some of my friends' house, I would see how their basic communication happened in a different language than mine. And I understood what they were saying, but that's not how I would exclaim. So in my home, if there was a moment of fear or a moment of exclamation, like strong passion, it always came out in Tamil. because we are Tamil. So it came out in Tamil a lot. And when people would visit us, they would go, we would be speaking to them in their language because we speak a couple of languages. Like we had this English friend of ours who moved to South India and he stayed there since. So a good 20, 30 years now. So when he would come home, we would speak to him in English. Yeah. And when it's time to exclaim or, oh, we are late about something or there's an issue at the house, the language that spurted out among our family members was Tamil because that's our language, right? And when you visit other people's houses, you realize that they exclaim in their language. And you're like, it always makes this really pleasant, ice-breaking things like, oh, that's how you would do it. Nice. I've never heard that. What does that mean? What are you saying? You know? And it always makes that little a nice ice-breaking event, you know. So
Mm.
yeah, these exclamations and stuff. The basic bed was Tamil for us, but our family had the superpower of wherever we were, we always knew one language that the people there don't. So when we would go to shopping and stuff, my mom could say something in another language, and it's like, "We don't like it, do you?" And nobody else understands. The shopkeeper doesn't understand. So we've had this privilege. Even Hindi, there is a strong presence in Karnataka. However, it's not the North Indian Hindi. We've had a strong presence of the Islamic State like 700 years ago in Karnataka, and they installed the Urdu language back then, which is actually a language created in the north part of India. But even back then, it evolved a little more separately in South India than it did in North India. So, to give you an example, if you speak any Hindi, in Hindi we would say subah, which means morning, but in the Urdu from South India, we say Pajjar. It's a certain kind of Urdu. So, where
Mm.
they say this is a certain word you would hear in Karnataka. And if you went to North India, because I have North Indian friends, this is how I know, and you said this word Pajjar to them, they were like, what is that?
Mm.
Uh, And he's like, Pajjar ko aata hai kya? Will you come to in the morning? Will you come in the morning? They're like, what? Will I come what? When? So many words are there, but many nouns and adjectives are completely new.
And I guess that's what happens when a language gets separated, geographically from its place of origin or place of like mostly common use. That's fascinating.
Yeah. Even
Yeah.
verbs, like I remember this bhagna is to run. In the north, you would say bhag leke aaya tha or bhagte hue aaya tha. I came running. And in the south, in Karnataka, in Belgaum specifically, where we have this certain version of Urdu, we call it Dakkani Urdu because Deccan Plateau, that's this plateau part geographically in the south part of India. We would
Mhm.
say nat leke aaya tha. Bhagna, natna. It's not even close.
No, no.
Yeah.
Wow. So when you're out and about in Karnataka, like whatever you're doing, you're with friends, you're shopping, you're at school, whatever, like what is the language landscape sound like then? And now knowing that there's that Urdu in there too, like what does it sound
Yeah.
like when you're out and about? And I know don't you don't I know it's a big region and you can be as general or specific as you'd like.
Yeah, no, I must say there are definitely pockets of people who choose to speak their language in a more pure way, which is great to observe. But sometimes the negative part of that is they give hashtags or, yeah, these connotations to the other communities. Turns out that the fish market community in Karnataka, at least in the city where I was raised, they were speaking Urdu. And this was attached to our school where I was raised. And many of those kids who live in that area would come to our school. So we spoke that specific Urdu with these guys. Yeah. And my parents were not really aware of this language. For them, it was the language spoken in that part of the city. Yeah. And to many Kannada families or a little more, let's say, posh English speaking families, they would go, oh, that's the fish market language. Yeah. But when I would switch to making a joke or speaking with a friend of mine, I would immediately switch to that Urdu because it felt the most relatable to me. I was raised there for the most part. So this felt the most relatable to me. But unfortunately, I couldn't share that with my parents. They were not raised there. So they don't know this language.
Mm.
So yeah, it creates these little pockets of, yeah, these guys speak Kannada in this certain way. I remember this friend of my mom's would come home and she would stay over in our place for work. She would, anyway, when she was there, mom would tell her in the morning, do you want to go take a shower? And I'll make breakfast. And so she would say that in Kannada because this lady was Kannada. So she would say, Snana madi bartiya. Snana is a shower or a bath. Snana madi bartiya. And this is because my mom worked in a bank, and people in the bank in that area wore clean clothes and spoke a certain way. And this friend of hers, they were raised together, yeah, in another city. And she would like, you've lost your way. Why are you saying Snana? That's too refined. Say Jalka because that's the word they use, and it's the same language. And everything else is the same except for that one word. Jalka anle, Jalka, Snana yakantiya. So yeah, there is these little pockets.
Let's talk about Canada. Let's talk about the language and tell us a bit about how the language is constructed. Some of the hallmarks of the language, like is it tonal, is it agglutinative, or anything else like that? How are we forming sentences? Are there particular greetings for particular people in the community? And anything else that you find interesting or quirky or fun about Canada?
Well, I love this language, so I have quite a lot to share with you. So it's not tonal, this language. I looked that up just to be sure. It's not tonal, and it does not have that the epiglottis sound, the sound. It doesn't have that. Urdu does. So people who I know we're going to talk about this context switching, code switching. Is it? What is that
Mhm.
term? Where you use words from another language. Yeah, we do have that section in a bit. But apart from that, one part of the language where we've borrowed words from another language. Apart from that, Kannada words themselves don't have the epiglottis sound, or neither is it tonal. There are different ways the language is constructed. It's really fascinating to me how diverse this one language is. In the North Karnataka part of it, like in English, we have these helping verbs, right? Like I am eating, the main verb is eating, but there's an am as well. There are these, for the lack of a better way of saying this, there are these helping verbs in North Karnataka's Kannada, which I don't see in South Karnataka's Kannada. So, for example, if I want to say, I am making food, yeah, there are two ways to say it, and different communities in North Karnataka say it they choose differently. So, Uta Madak Honteni, I'm going to make food, or Uta Tinnak Honteni, sorry, to eat is to Tinnak Honteni, Uta Tinnak Honteni, I'm going to eat food. And when you're doing it in the present continuous, there are two ways where they would go Madak Hatteni, which literally means I'm climbing up to do it. Hattudu is to climb, right? It's climbing up to do it. Or Mada Kunteni, which means to sit down to do it. Some communities would say, wait, hang on, when you're eating food, you would be sitting down. So you can't say the other one. But for so many other people, it is so subconscious that in their community, they always say climbing. So they climb up to every verb and they just systematically use it. And the other guys would go, wait, this is absurd. It logically makes no sense. And the people from South Karnataka are like, why are you guys climbing and sitting down? Can't you just eat instead? So these constructions, it's in the same language, right? And when the South Karnataka guys come up to the north and they're like, huh, fascinating. That's how you say it? Why are you guys climbing anything, really?
I wonder about that. Like climbing and sitting, where does that come from? I don't expect you to have an answer. I'm just thinking,
No,
like,
I'm very imaginative. Even the French expressions, which are very imagery, I have a theory, which is probably not true, but I have my theory. So similarly in Kannada, I think it comes maybe, huh? I'm not sure about this, but maybe it comes from the time when communities were simpler and they lived in villages, and people went out, climbed up the hills to get certain coconuts. I don't know. I'm just guessing out, or they went down the valley where they would have to go down. So there was this sense of ascending and descending, geographically
yeah,
speaking. Seems like that to me.
yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I was wondering if it was like a, from the old days when people kind of lived on the land in a different way than they do now. So
In
that,
French too, we say monter à Paris, which means I'm climbing up to Paris. But even when you're in Lille, which is no, more north than Paris is, they still say monter à Paris. And some people say no, descendre à Paris. And the guys who say monter à Paris, they go no, because in Paris there is Montmartre, which is really high in altitude relative to Lille. So we are altitude wise monter à Paris. So there's these two schools of thought. I see that's very similar to Kannada. Another thing that I noticed, and I don't know if this is specific to Kannada itself, but we definitely express this in Kannada. Instead of saying hello, we go, did you have, depending on the time of the day, we would ask, did you have that meal of the day? And that's just hello. It's a rhetorical question. And very, very often, even if you didn't, you'll just say yes. Like if it's like 4 p.m., you'd go, did you have tea? Instead of saying hello when you're just walking down the street and you know somebody. Let's say he didn't have tea because it's happened to me and my parents. And I was like, no, 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 hang on, I protest. We've not had tea. And they said, no, no, don't do that. It's just a hello. Just say yes. So this is very fascinating. And after lunchtime, they say, oh, tinti aita, uta aita. Like, have you? And they would put their hand close to their mouth. It's
Mhm.
a very informal society where the shopkeepers around our house, we just know them. When we go walk down or we bike down, we would say hi to them. But yeah, when you're biking down and you're going slow, you're like, namaskara, tindi aita. And you're like, tindi aito, nimda aita. It's just a hello. It's like, I acknowledge your presence, I'm saying hi, and now I'm moving on, you know?
Yeah, yeah. You know why I love that? Because it reminds me of when people say, um, a way to ask how someone is like to feed them, or like people don't really care about you unless they've asked you, have you eaten yet, or something like that. And to me, when you're saying that, and you can tell me, but it just speaks to the level of community care that maybe exists, and how people take care of one another, or maybe that tradition of community and really taking care of your neighbors, and ensuring that they're nourished and that they have everything that they need. Because if they do, then they're fine, right? So you don't have to say, how are you? Or,
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. No, I've seen this so often. We've had this is a very I don't, for lack of a better word, I'm just going to say Kannada, but maybe this is also true for Tamil Nadu or another place where I have not lived. It may be true in India, but I do see the difference of this aspect with Europe, where in India, we would make very frequent impromptu plans. It was very spontaneous. And as a community, like my parents, with me and my sister, we would all go. And my dad would just come back from work one day and he would go, "Oh, do you remember that uncle?" I was like, "Yeah." "Oh, he said we should have dinner today." I was like, "Okay, get ready, let's go." And we would just get up, get ready, and go to somebody else's house and not have spoken about it 3 weeks in advance. And we would just eat with them, you know. And very often this also happened the other way around, where people would come home and my dad would just come in. "All right, cool. You know that auntie we were speaking about from church? Oh, she and her family, they are all coming to our home for dinner. So you take a shower, wear some nice presentable clothes, and get ready for dinner." Because that's what we did, you know. So I noticed that was coming to Europe, and I don't mean to criticize Europe, it's just a different culture where it's a little more pre-planned. It's a little more put down in the calendar and a little more foresight before you can do that. But yeah, I've conserved that part of my culture where even though I live in Paris, I do that very often with my Indian buddies. And now my neighbors where I live also join the fun. They're like, "Oh, Joshua's making curry, let's go," you know.
Thank you for making that contrast too, because it reminds me of how colonialism has affected all of us, Black people, brown people, everybody else around the world, and how that kind of, because in this society with this Western lens, and these European standards, it's considered rude to do that,
Yeah,
to, change plans,
impose.
impose on somebody. But in our cultures, in my Caribbean culture and your Indian culture, it is more of a community. There's more of that fluidity in going out with uncle, auntie, neighbor, friend of the family. But then we're told our whole lives that, I don't know about you, and I don't mean to, you know, uh, project upon you, but I feel like societally we're told in our lives that that's wrong, that's impolite. And I love that you brought that up. And I brought it up, but I love that you brought up
Excellent,
um
yeah.
the tradition there, and the way that that community works there, and I think is lovely.
I remember going to many of our neighbors' places. I would be backing down. Back when I didn't know that this was the rhetorical part, my mom yelled at me once for doing this because it was impolite on my end. But yeah, I was backing down and somebody asked, "Oh, hi Josh, have you had your breakfast?" And I said, "No, I haven't," because I hadn't. And then he's like, "Well, come have breakfast." So I just went in and ate breakfast, you know. And then when I came back home, it was like a Saturday or something. I came back home and I told my mom, "Oh, I've already had breakfast. No, thank you." I was like, "What? Where did you eat breakfast? You're a young little kid. Where did you eat breakfast? You don't have money." I was like, "Well, the neighbor said if I had breakfast," and I said no, and I said, "That's rhetorical. You don't answer that. You say yes, but I haven't had breakfast." "Yeah, but who did I make breakfast for?" There's this thing, But for them, for the neighbors, it was not. This is what I really like about it. It was not shocking that, in fact, it's a matter of pleasure and a matter of this family is so close to us that we would feed their son just out of the way. You
Mm,
know, I'm sure that's how they took it you
yeah.
know but yeah, now I'm trying to, yeah, bridge these two identities of mine. I am that guy who is informally walking into people's houses and inviting people over last minute, But when that's not really possible in Paris, I'd like to do it anyway, but with a little bit of forethought. Like I would organize it for the weekend and I would send everybody a message. I'm making chicken curry, the one that I make with, I ate for 20 years at home. I'm making that this Sunday afternoon. Why don't you come home? You know? And then, yeah, people do show up and they're like, this was great. Let's do it again. I was like, yeah, there's a part of my culture here and there's also a part of yours. It's a good compromise.
Yeah, I think so. I definitely think so. We know we're in Karnataka. We know that there's many languages going around and being exchanged and learned and etc. and communicated. Do you notice or have you ever noticed any type of like stratification of those languages? Like what actually sticks out to me, I'm going back to what you said about the Urdu that you heard, and that was considered the Urdu from the fish market,
Market.
the
Yeah.
fish, the fishmongers. That was their language. And I'm also wondering too, and you didn't mention this, so this is just something I'm wondering, like, was that language ever like ostracized or looked down upon? Did people ever feel like, oh, that's theirs, we don't associate with them? And I don't mean to bring negativity into this, but it does make me think like certain things that are associated with certain professions in society, some people kind of feel like, oh, that's the other side, like that's not for us. So in thinking of the languages that are being exchanged in Karnataka, are there any that people are kind of like, no, we don't speak that, that's for them, or I'm in this situation so I can only speak this?
Mm.
Like, how is there any kind of breakdown that you've noticed like that?
Certainly, there's a lot of that. When you have a community that exclusively speaks their language or they want to conserve their language, there's definitely going to be a us versus them kind of a mentality. But what I find fascinating is on the other side, that is also true, but in inverse. So, for example, this fishmonger language that we were speaking about, there are also these madrasas, which is like a center of learning, university kind of place where they teach Urdu. People actually go there to learn Urdu and they teach them poetry and how to read the Quran, all of this good stuff. That is a certain level of intellect that takes time and investment. And for those guys, it's like, well, the others don't do poetry like we do. And they have these conferences 2 or 3 times a year where they invite poets and they do like free. It's like rap, really, but it's freestyle Urdu poetry, where there are two parties and they are poetrying each other like a rap battle, if you will.
Like a
But
poetry slam,
yeah,
kind of like
exactly.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There's this Qawwali thing, and sometimes it's just everybody looking at one great poet and hearing what he has to say. And most of the time, he's improvising, right? And to them, because I've heard this, to them, it's like, well, our language permits us to do this. Nobody else is doing this. But it's the same language from the fishmongers now. So if you live in that language, then you would feel, oh, there are these benefits of my language, and then you would look at what the other one does not have, and the flip side. So
Mm.
they're all mutually true. And in Karnataka's Kannada, there is definitely the North Karnataka Kannada and the South Karnataka Kannada, and the demarcation is clear. When you hear people say one sentence in Kannada, you can tell where they are from. Are they from the North or
Mm.
from the South? You can tell them. And the South people have a certain way of looking at the North, and vice versa. Like I'm from the North and I lived in the South, right? So in the South, they would tell me stuff like, um, that sounds very villager. People actually said that to me. And to me, it
Mm.
it felt like, I can't relate to another version of Kannada. Their Kannada is way too refined, too proper, too clean. It's not relatable enough. And I would say, well, your language is not funny, man. It's not. There's no humor. There's no connection. It is a little sterile. But that's my opinion, which is true,
Yeah.
and their opinion is true too.
So what do you feel? So you're talking about the South, Karnataka is humorless. What
For me,
or
for
for
me.
you. This is your opinion, this is your story. Um, what do you find that that gives you that impression that it's a little drier than the North version?
My parents always discouraged me from cursing, and it was not allowed at home. Growing up, I never cursed at all. But in North Karnataka, we curse a lot. And the people that you are allowed to curse amongst, like for example, older men are not allowed to curse near kids. That's a no-no. They're not allowed to curse near women. It's a no-no, right? But among the men, they do. So it's like a permission to say, here it's all right. I don't find that in South Karnataka.
Mm,
There is this dynamic that I just don't find down south. So if somebody's cursing, people are just all of a sudden, oh, this important guy just cursed. And everybody is, for some inexplicable reason, they're just more relaxed.
mm.
And I don't find that in South Karnataka. So for me, it's really a disadvantage. But on the flip side, they would say, oh, who curses? You're not allowed to curse. That's not nice. Okay, for that point of view, that is true too.
Is that the only thing that you notice that's different between North and South? Are there any other things with maybe literature or media or anything that's maybe tangible that you notice is different or further defines those differences between North and South Karnataka?
Yeah, I get that one in a second. I just realized that people in the South curse too. But yeah, it's different. I don't know. I'm sorry, I probably jumped the gun on that. It's different. The North Karnataka, Kannada feels a little more rustic and relatable to me. I don't know which other word to find, but it feels better. It's probably just nostalgia and familiarity, but it feels better to me than the South Karnataka, Kannada. But yeah, anyway, jumping to the question that you were asking. That's very, very interesting. We do find it. There's a lot of more money in the south part of Karnataka than in the north. Like the capital city, Bangalore, is in the south, and that's where the Kannada film industry is. So the music and the movies that, let's say, define Karnataka movies are done in the south. So
Okay.
there's certainly going to be that kind of influence. Many universities down south as well, relative to the north. So there's definitely that kind of influence. But what's interesting is a lot of what formed modern day Kannada in terms of folklore, in terms of religion and culture, comes from the north. Because 700 years ago, I think it was in the 1300s, there was this poet, Basava, who's also a king, I think, king poet, Basava, who was in the north. And he created the Lingayat community. They still exist today. And he wrote a lot of thousands of these little couplets or two couplets together, like 4 lines of poetry. He would write that, which calls people towards a certain way of life. And it was very Buddhism inspired way of life. Live and let live, peace dwelling people kind of way of life. Yeah.
Hmm.
And this was done in the north part of Karnataka. It's not the Kannada we speak anymore because 700 years ago, we've evolved the language since then. We call
Hmm.
it Hale Kannada or Old Kannada from what he said back in the day. But back then, I can imagine they, because there's not other pieces of strong literature from the south at the same time, I could imagine the more prominent one was in the north.
Okay.
Also, to be fair, there was no demarcation of this part is Karnataka and that part is not Karnataka. There's no demarcation like this back in the day. There was a Vijayanagara Empire in the 1300s, which was literally all of South India, all of it. And then there was the Bahmani Sultanate, and it was a Muslim empire, which was only in the north part of Karnataka. Then the Vijayanagara Empire was it? No, sorry, the Mysore Kingdom, which was only in the south, but it was really large, so it came up. So all of these things, so there was no clear this one's Karnataka and that one's not Karnataka. But yeah, today there's more money in the south, and yeah, more literature stuff happening in the south than in the north. But yeah, we have our pride and legacy from Basava's days. We've conserved it, and we say that out loud. There's a lot of folklore
Mm.
culture in the north where people walk around in a certain time of the year where they're singing these ancient poetry, and this is not Karnataka, and it feels like this is amazing.
Oh gosh, I had a few questions. I was writing while you were talking. I was not scrolling my phone. And
No,
I
you're
always forget to
good.
tell people that because I don't want it to seem like I'm not paying attention. I'm paying
Mhm.
ultimate attention and I'm writing stuff down. I have two questions, so let me do this one at a time. Um, you said there was no demarcation of North and South Karnataka back then when this poetry was prolific and being written. But now I'm wondering, is there a physical demarcation of the North and South, or is it kind of like how we have in the States where we know we just know because we're from here, but like maybe the culture defines the region? Or is it kind of like, oh, anything north of this city or this river is north and this is south? Like, how are we defining north and south in Karnataka?
I think it is very culture based, but
Okay.
it would be quite reductionist to say that this is Karnataka and nothing more. The less part, I don't think we are going that way because you're quite a diverse people, but nothing more. This is where it gets a little tricky for people in India. So in Karnataka itself, there's the Kannada language, of course, the North and South Kannada dialects that we spoke about. There's that. But there's also the Muslim community, the Urdu speaking community. Some people like me who are not Muslim are still interested in Urdu. There's these kind of people too. But then there's this scores. I was doing research about this for my for a talk I did in the Polyglot conference about the Kannada language. That's where I unearthed the list. There are tens of languages and communities, culture-wise, in Karnataka itself. There's another language called Tulu. My dad speaks this language fluently. It sounds nothing like Karnataka, like Kannada, And my dad speaks it when he's speaking to his friends. I'm like, what is happening? I don't know what he's saying. But Tulu is from South Karnataka, and it has nothing to do with the South Karnataka Kannada I spoke about. It sounds completely different. There's another place called Kodagu. It's a district. In Kodagu, they speak Kodava, which sounds nothing like Tulu or Kannada. And I have a friend from my engineering days who was Kodava, and he spoke Kodava with his parents on the phone. And I was like, what language is that, man? Like, oh, this is from Kodagu, man. This is Kodava. How do you say my name is Joshua? And he would say it. I'm sorry, I don't remember. He would say it. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. That sounds great. So there's all of these other little micro entities, identities that exist as well. So for me, there's no clear demarcation that this much is Kannada limited to Karnataka and nothing more. This is hard to do. Like in Tamil Nadu, there is this kind of dance, folklore dance with music called the Panguttu, and they do a certain kind of a very passionate, very strong. It feels like a workout when you do it. Everything in your body moves, right? They do that dance, and they do it after a percussion beat. The bass percussion beat is the same almost everywhere. They can add layers to it, remove layers to it. Someone is singing sometimes, someone is not singing sometimes. But this beat is very popular in Tamil Nadu, and there's parts of South Karnataka where they also do this, but not in
Mm.
North Karnataka, however. So wait, hang on. Which part is not allowed to be in Karnataka now because they do this dance? It's a very blurry lines kind of question.
Yeah. I want to know more about this dance. Where can I watch it? On YouTube?
Oh yeah, I can send you some links. Now in India, we have a strong presence of hip hop and TV shows where we are practicing hip hop, coming up with Indian hip hop. But I noticed that this Marathi singer, his name is 100 RBH, the letters RBH, because 100 in Hindi is so, and Saurabh is also a Hindi name. That's his
Okay.
name.
Okay.
Anyway, so this guy is singing a song, and in that song, he says, during the song, he stops singing and then he starts pointing to the sound and he moves his head in that Tamil fashion, the Tapanguttu fashion. And in fact, I realized that along the Konkan coast, which is the west coast of India, where we have the Konkan people who speak Konkani, it's another language in Karnataka, which was influenced by Portuguese. Anyway, but Mangaloreans speak that, Marathi people have a little bit of that, and going down the way, all the way south to Kerala and Tamil Nadu. All of these people have that tune, that sound, that percussion sound in their culture. So now I ask myself, am I sure that this is actually Tamil? Maybe it is. I don't know. But why is this Marathi dude putting this music in his thing? And he says this is relatable for him. This is his identity, you know? So yeah, there is this Tamil movie called Mari, Maari. He's a gangster in the movie. And there is a song, the title song, the name of the song is also Mari, but you can see him doing the dance to that music.
Oh my
So
God.
to the Tamil people, it's obviously Tamil. I'm Tamil too, right? So to the Tamil people, it's obviously Tamil. There's no debate about this. But then you notice people in the Konkan area doing it too. There's a Kannada movie called Kantara, and they have this kind of worshipping the local deity with percussion instruments and also some, they have some other instruments too. They put it in their feet and stuff. But you can see parts of this music and folklore there too. And I'm like, huh, interesting. It's far away from Tamil Nadu, but closer so than North Karnataka. So it might have been influenced by that.
Yeah. I secretly would love for somebody to do like those documentary series where people are like finding the truth about such and stuff. I would love for someone to do one about percussion and drums because the way that percussion and drums comes from certain regions of the world and it's like, is that theirs? Is that ours? Is that influenced by so and so? In Indian music and African music, in the Americas, I think it's just fascinating, like drums and every iteration of a drum or a shaker or
Yeah.
something. And I would love to have the time to pitch something like that. But I'm not a musician, so I don't feel like I would be a good, authority on something like that. But I do find percussion very interesting, and I think that Indian music is dope. So I definitely want to hear a lot more of these on my own time. The second question I was going to ask you was about the folk tales, and you said that these folk tales in North Karnataka are alive, and you see people on the streets like reenacting them. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, to be fair, this community I spoke about, the Lingayat community, they also exist in the south, but they came from the north. So
Okay.
even when you go to South India, South Karnataka, you could still find yeah, Lingayat communities doing this folklore stuff. It's very, very interesting. And sometimes they're talking about such deep stuff. Like when you pay attention and ask, wait, what does that mean? And then what does that mean? And so what is he trying to say? They're like, huh, that is amazing. So there's this one folk song that Basava wrote, and he says, his local deity is Kudala Sangama. That's the name of the god. So if any poetry line or folklore song, if you hear that sound, that word Kudala Sangama, you know it was written by Basava because that's
Okay.
his signature, if you will. You know, in that he's saying he's calling people to Buddhism and living nicely, living peacefully among each other. In that he says, when somebody comes to your house and you don't offer him a smile or a piece of your bread, then when you don't offer him that, is it so that the earth opens up and swallows you whole? Something like this, he writes. Is it so that now he's giving you a list of things? It's just poetic. He's giving you a list of things, and in the end, he says, "Now, do you think Kudala Sangama will accept your prayers?" So the gist of it is just be nice to that stranger who came to your home. That's
Yeah.
what he's trying to say, right? But yeah, we would see a lot of people singing this in North Karnataka, in Belgaum, where I was raised. We would see a lot of people walking around and singing this stuff, and some of these monks don't have a living, they don't have a job, they just go around doing this. Even to okay, I don't know about today, but I can certainly speak for 2005, 6, 7, 8 when I was there. Around that time, I would notice these guys coming, and these Kannada families, like I went for Kannada tuitions in this Kannada family's house, and this lady would teach me Kannada. And all the other students were there. But yeah, I remember there's this folklore guy who came, and he comes every year, and he goes on like a walking pilgrimage, and he just comes, and he knows her, she knows him, and she comes and he sits outside, and he plays a little bit with his instrument, and he sings a little piece of song, and she gives him some food, and he gives him some money, and then he goes away, and that's what he does. And she's like, she comes back home and she says, "This song I heard when I was a child," she would say. And it's like that's probably why she gave it to him, but it's also influencing how she treats people because he said something morally valuable.
Right.
So yeah, so it's definitely present in North Karnataka. I was not living in South Karnataka back then, so I wouldn't know. But I know the Lingayat community exists in South Karnataka, and I'm sure they have their yeah, folklore events too.
I love that. And I love that this guy can just go around and sing songs and get some money and some food. Like I think
Yeah.
that's how like every society needs to be, because everybody has, I'm going to sound crazy, but everybody has their values that they can contribute, and to be made to feel like you're singing and playing a song and sharing something of moral value, that you don't deserve a salary, or you don't like, especially in the United States, and probably in Europe, but I don't live in Europe. So but it's like, oh, I love that. I love that that's a thing, and that he can do that and eat and gets a little bit of money on the side too. That's tremendous. So we were talking about music, we were talking about folk tales and poetry. Let's talk about food. Are there dishes that like you will only find in a Canada speaking household or a Canada speaking region, or something that's just very tied to the culture of Canada speaking people?
Yeah, I've had this privilege because my parents are great people. So we moved to Karnataka, right? But they had their Tamil heritage. So when they would go to work, especially my mom, when she would go to work, she would speak to her colleagues and ask them because so many ingredients are easily, readily available in Karnataka that you would not see in Tamil Nadu. And so my mom would ask them, what do you do with this? And then they would say, oh, you can make a great sambar out of it, or you can make a great vegetable, we call it palya. Palya is like a vegetable preparation. You can make a great vegetable preparation, palya, out of it, and it goes great with chapati. It's like, what, really? How do you do it? Oh, it's super simple. You first do this and that and that. And so madike is one of these sprouts, and they put small pieces of potato in it sometimes. It can be spicy as well, and it's amazing. So you got to put the sprouts in a cloth the previous night and dip it in water and hang it up and wait all night. The next day, you see the little sprouts coming out, you know, and then you make the vegetable preparation out of that and have it with chapati, and it's delicious. Yeah. And so this is, to my knowledge, it's not Tamil because I've not seen it in my Tamil friends, families, places. It's definitely more frequent in Karnataka. And we've had it in our house because my parents are great people. So they asked their colleagues, they learned how to make it, and they would make it for us. So these kind of stuff. A lot of vegetable preparations, which are Karnataka, which are Kannada, that we would have. In the south part near Mangalore, there is this thing called kori roti. It's a very brittle bread, which literally breaks when you try to manipulate it. And you don't, usually in Indian breads, you break a piece of the bread and it's a supple bread. With that bread, you collect a piece of curry preparation or meat or vegetable, and then you eat it. That's how you do most breads in India, chapati, fulka, what have you. But this specific curry roti, kori roti, in a big plate, and my mouth salivates as I speak about it. In a plate, they put pieces of this kori roti and they break it with their hands, and then they put a huge ladle filled with chicken curry on top of it. And it's a chicken curry which makes it supple, and you just use your hands to dig in and eat. And this is so Mangalore. You can't find it anywhere else. So even in North Karnataka, sometimes you go and say kori roti, they're like, what? No, what is kori roti? And if you even go to a Mangalorean store, these Udupi stores, they would not be selling this specific food. You would get it in Mangalore, however, in south part of
Ah,
Karnataka.
okay. I'm also salivating now, thinking of all this food. Um, where are we with heat and spice in Karnataka? Are we spicy? Are we mild?
We are spicy.
Okay.
For South Indians, we are mild,
Hmm.
but for the globe, we are spicy. So the most spicy food for me, I think, would be from Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. These people are on another level, man. They take pieces of green chili and eat it with their food. So this is on another level for me. And I think even Tamil food is more spicy than Kannada food. So I think we are the mildest of the lot. But
Hmm.
we have this specific preparation. We call it gunpowder or podi as well. It is this preparation with peanuts, red chili, and garlic.
Oh
And
no.
it's this powder, and you put it on your dosa. It is spicy.
What
Like
is it
if a not,
called?
we just call it gunpowder or podi. Like when you
Puri.
say podi dosa, it's just that podi on top of the dosa. It's this red. People in Maharashtra, in Mumbai, they put this in their vada pav. We put it in our dosa. I would protest that this is Kannada. I may be wrong, but I'll still protest that this is Kannada. But in Mumbai, they put the same thing in their vada pav. Vada pav is like I don't know if you know about this. It's a burger, an Indian burger. The pav actually comes from Portugal. It's the same word. They also call it pav in Portuguese.
Yeah, yeah,
But they
yeah.
they came to the west part of India, right? These
Right,
Portuguese, and they
right.
had this pav making culture. So Bombay still has this pav thing, and they put the aloo tikki, a preparation of potato that was fried. So cooked potato with some spices, and then they would fry it, and they put it in the middle of this pav bread, which is very soft, like a brioche, but it's not sweet. And inside they put some chutney. So they put a mint chutney and this red powder. The red powder is ours. But yeah, you share it with your neighbors, and they like it too. So why not?
I had a moment because you said the puri um that you also call gunpowder has peanuts in it, and I am deathly allergic to peanuts.
Oh no,
I know.
you can't do
Co-
any nuts.
coconuts.
Oh yeah. Oh, we have. Oh, come on. We've got plenty with coconuts. The Konkan coast is filled with coconut trees. We have plenty with coconuts. I think you could switch it out with dried shredded coconut. I'm sure
Oh,
people do this 100%.
yeah, yeah. So coconut's a big part of the cuisine too.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, how are we eating coconuts?
Of so many different ways. So in Tamil Nadu, we grate the coconut and we put in some water and then we filter it out and we keep what we call the coconut milk. We keep that milk and we put it in after the chicken curry is prepared and ready. Then you put the coconut milk on top and let it boil once to just give it that nice coconut flavor. This is very, at least for me, this is very Tamil. But in Karnataka, they grate the coconuts and they put it inside the preparation itself. So you get pieces of coconut in your mouth. But in the
Hmm.
Tamil food, it wasn't the case. So coconut is very, very important in South India. In Kerala, it's even more important. They even cook their food with coconut oil. So when they fry their chicken in coconut oil and then you eat it, there's no other coconut apart from the coconut oil, but you can still taste it. And they put their coconut everywhere in Kerala
Wow.
relative to in Karnataka and in Tamil Nadu.
Yeah.
But yeah, coconut is very important. Like the moisturizer we use for our skin, I think I'm sure you'll have it too. Like on a cold day, you mark your skin and it gets a little gray, right?
Yeah.
So we use moisturizer over here, but in South India, many people still use coconut oil.
So that's what we've got. And you're in Paris. I would love to know how you are finding ways to stay connected to your language, to your culture, while you're in Paris, and where are you experiencing or taking part in South Asian community in Paris, and what is that experience like? What is it has it been like for you?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little difficult to note that we don't have many Kannada people, at least that I know of. Maybe a few students here and there. A very strong Tamil community in Paris where I hang out a lot. It's in this area, Gare du Nord, that area. And there's these stores where they sell good South Indian, good Tamil food. So I go there very often to eat because Tamil food is nostalgia for me. My parents used to make this at home. So I feel, yeah, quite at home thanks to Gare du Nord. But yeah, we don't have many Kannada people here in Paris. But however, like my buddies, people that I went to school with, we have our WhatsApp group and we stay in touch. Every time it's somebody's birthday, we call them and yeah, we wish them happy birthday. I get a call on my birthday too. But I force myself to speak in Kannada when we are in a call with those people, and they're like, "Dude, we also speak English. You know that, right?" Like, but yeah, you have access to Kannada. You live in Karnataka. I don't. So I miss this stuff, and I want to speak in Kannada. And they're like, "All right, let's do Kannada today."
Do you have moments where you are finding yourself fusing your Karnataka upbringing with your Parisian life? Like, are you making hybrids of whether it's food or language or clothing or music, whatever? Like, how are you bringing the two together in your life?
So that informality thing is something I certainly miss. So now I have a list of Indian friends. And interestingly, a German guy joined our group and he's also turned into Indian. So the objective really is very simple. If everybody is free, then we'll do whatever we are doing together. Like we'll cook food and eat that together. Like last weekend, last Thursday, I think it was, this guy, Mike, he said, Joshua, have you ever had a couscous? I was like, no. And then he says, I'm coming over. Then he got the ingredients and he made a couscous. And I called the other guy. I like, dude, we're making couscous. You want to come? And he's like, yeah, I'm on my way. So he came, and this was unplanned. He called me like 20 minutes before starting to cook. And when we were cooking, we called the other guy. I think this is very South Indian culture for me. And I like that it's here. I would say that maybe if I invited some of my other friends, maybe they've already made plans or they mentally decided to do something else, like chill perhaps, and they would not be down for it. I understand that. So once I have a success dish with my neighbors, so I have this thing every time I move to a new place, I print out a small piece of paper where I have my name and my number on it, and I write a little message, like a welcome message, and I put it in everybody's post box with an invitation to join a WhatsApp group. So I did that in my building too, and people joined, and they were like, "This has never happened before." So for me, this is my part of India. This is very India for me. So we in India, if somebody did this, it'd be like, "Oh, such a sweet guy." So after that, I invited my neighbors home, and we had to plan this really well because sometimes someone's not here and so on. And finally, I had on one Saturday, I think it was 2 or 3 weekends ago, we had 15 people over here eating chicken curry and rice, and we took some pictures, and they were like, "This is amazing. We should do it again." And they have their way of expressing intimacy, where one of my neighbors was jamming because she's a musician. She was jamming with one of her band members. He is a percussionist in her apartment. So she sent a message on the group and said, "We are jamming if you want to join." So me and my other neighbor Sam, who is Irish, half French. I'm giving everybody's identity away. But it was in the middle of the night on the weekend, and I was like, yeah, I'm down. So we went and we jammed, and it was great. And we were there until like 2 or 3 in the morning. That is their way of showing intimacy. And he says this is very Irish. And then he shows us videos of his granddad doing the same thing, jamming with
Oh.
his folks, you know. But we finally have the same needs. I think South Indians tend to do it with food.
And rightfully so, because I imagine everything you mentioned about food sounds delicious. So who would not want to come over and hang out for some curry and some music and getting to
Yeah.
know, like, that's good. And thank goodness, like the New Yorker in me got a little scared. I'm like, you're giving your phone number to strangers and inviting them to your house. But I'm glad it worked out. I have to remember that
No, I would put it in their mailbox, right? And
mhm,
it was a QR code. When they scanned it, they joined the WhatsApp group, and I can kick them out if I want to.
that's
So
true. Joshua, thank you so much for this conversation.
I'm glad I could share this with you. I'm intrigued how interested you are about a distant language. It's in the other end of the world, and I'm intrigued how interested you are about it.
I want everyone to be interested about distant languages and cultures and worlds because that's how we all come together. That's how we can all understand each other. Let us know where we can find you on socials and how we can connect with you if we want to get in touch. Maybe stop by for some curry.
Yeah, if you're in Paris, please drop me a line. The easiest way to get in touch with me would probably be Instagram. My name is Joshua Balata, and it's the guy with the mustache on the image, Balata. That's the same name I have on my YouTube as well, and on my website as well. So if you just Google Joshua Balata, I think you can find me.
Amazing. I'll add links to those in the show notes for this episode so that people who are listening can click and get in touch with you right away.
Thanks so much for having me, El. This was a great conversation.
Yeah. I like to just end on a fun note. Final question for you is, do you have any jokes, popular sayings, tongue twisters, cool slang words, idioms, words of wisdom, or words of advice in Canada to share and to teach us?
There's one that I don't really agree with because I'm quite the unlimited mindset kind of a guy. But yeah, there was one that I was told very often by elders when I would be in a dreaming phase and I want to do this and that and everything. And they were like, yeah, calm down, perhaps. So they would say, "Hasike dastu kalu chachu," meaning as long as your mat is, your feet should only stretch that far. And
Oh.
and I would be like, no, no, I want a bigger mat.
Damn it, I want a bigger mat.
Yeah, I don't really agree with this idiom, but yeah, this is stuck with me because people kept saying it. Hasige dastu kal chachu.
Can I try to say it after you if you give it to me syllable by syllable?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Hasige
Hasige
iddashtu
iddastu
kalu
kalu
chachu.
chachu.
Hasige iddashtu kalu chachu.
Hasige iddustu kalu chachu.
Yeah, exactly. Good job.
Awesome. Now, how do you say I want a bigger mat?
ನನಗೆ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಹಾಸಿಗೆ ಬೇಕು. I want a
That's
big mat.
I want a big one, a big
I've got
one.
long feet, yo.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Before I let you go, in a situation like this, you've been talking to someone for quite some time. You're about to go your separate ways. What is the best way in Canada to say goodbye?
Oh yeah, this is great. Just like that hello thing, right? Which is so different. We would say barteni, which means
Bartini.
it literally means I'm coming, like I'm arriving, I'm coming to your house or something like that. But you say that when you're leaving, right? And I would go like, wait, hang on. I would ask my parents, you guys have got this switched because it's a hogutteni. That means I'm going. Like, yeah, but you never say that. Because when you say that, it means like you're going and you're never coming back. So
Oh,
the phrase is na hogi bartini, like I'm going, but I will come back. And when you contract it, it becomes bartini. So when you're
Bartini.
leaving, it is so strange. When you're leaving, you say, all right, I'm coming, bye-bye. But then you're saying you're coming when you're leaving. This
Yeah.
is very Kannada.
Ah,
Even in Tamil
Bartini.
Nadu, yeah, bartini, bartini. They would just say like a bye, bartini, aita, and they would
Bartini.
leave. Oh, even in Tamil Nadu, we do this
Oh,
even in Tamil. I think it has to do with the South Indian culture itself. I don't know. Sorry, I should correct myself. We say that in Hindi too. I think it's just an Indian thing. We say that a lot.
I love that.
Barteni.
Parteni, Joshua. Thank you so much again, and I'll be talking to you soon.
Yep. See you. Thanks for having me, El. Bye-bye.
Bye.
New episodes of Speaking Tongues are available every Monday, 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to like and share episodes with other language lovers like ourselves.